I left Cartagena and started to head south. Roughly speaking, I was headed south in the direction of Ecuador, but you know, Colombia is huge. It's the size of Germany and Spain combined. Or is it Germany, France and Spain combined? I'm not sure. It's massive. You get the point. Which is probably twice the size of Texas if you're living in the US, just to kind of give you a kind of a mental picture of it. And things were going fine. And I got to the town of Caucasia. And I had a ferocious dose of the ring of skiddies. Like, I mean, one of the nuclear power varieties, you know, like dysentery or something like that. Every time I hit the toilet, it was like I was going to take off for Tokyo. But I was down for an entire week with it. I was just absolutely destroyed. You know, people say, oh, I'm not well, I'm sick, you know, I have the runs or I have the trots or whatever it might be. But when you get the South American version of that, it's like this. It's kind of like everything fine. And all of a sudden, click of your fingers, you have 2 seconds to get to that toilet. And one, and then absolutely terrible. And, you know, my arse was like a cigarette lighter in the car, you know, just going, just absolutely terrible. And I actually, in that week, while I was really, really struggling, I ended up cobbling together the majority of the book that I made Die Roman. You'd be amazed when you got nothing else to do but sit about 2 foot from the toilet. You know, you said to yourself, well, what else can I do? I'm gonna, you know, may as well get stuck in and try and do something with this, right? I could never leave the hotel because, you know, my constitution wouldn't allow it. Or I'd end up shitting myself. While I was there, I ended up releasing that as an ebook, you know, which is free, and a lot of people read it. If you're watching this, maybe you read it too. So now that when you're reading through it and you see the bad language and all that sort of stuff, or some of the bad grammar or things in it, that it was done in an extreme state of duress, and that might help explain some of it. But that was where everything pretty much stopped, because I no longer had the heart, the energy or anything to continue at all. I was done. You know, the whole project had failed. I was sick as a dog. And I've never been so down in the dumps in my entire life, actually. It was absolutely terrible. A lot of people think that when you get sick like that it, you know, obviously it drains you physically. But it doesn't just drain you physically, mentally. It just, like, it absolutely tears a hole in you. Excuse the pun. That was when almost all of the filming stopped anyway. And I just decided that it was time to go home. And, you know, I was just trying to figure, well, what's the best way to get home? I was particularly happy about some of the stuff that I'd written about the Route of 40. And I was kind of, in my head, I started putting together a plan. I said, there might be a way to actually try and turn this into something, is to actually, you know, maybe I'll go and do all of the Route of 40. Because in my head I still wanted to do Dublin to New York, and I knew that if I just went back to Ireland and just went and got a job, that I'd always be thinking back on this whole thing, that it'd be this big massive failure, and it'd probably annoy me till the day I died. So what I turned around and did over the course of the 7 days, I kind of galvanised myself, and I said, right, if I can go down south and do all of the Route of 40, you know, I was just going to do it for myself. I wasn't going to film it or any of that sort of stuff. But if I was able to do the 5,200 kilometres from La Quiaca to Rio Gallegos, that would be a good enough test for me that I'd be able to say that I could then do Dublin to New York. Because there's about an equivalent amount of off-roading required to get through Mongolia and up to the Road of Bones. The Route of 40 in Argentina is incredibly remote. There's absolutely nobody there. It's the same set of risks that I'd be exposing myself to if I went Dublin to New York. So I said, right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to bail south and I'm going to go and do the Route of 40. And if I can do it, then the following April, I'm going to leave and do Dublin to New York. I eventually left Caucasia. I'm about 500 or 600 kilometres north of Bogota at the moment. This is about 50 kilometres from a small town called St. Gil. Check out what's behind me. Look at that. Colombia is gorgeous. I just spent the day with, well, I suppose 4 or 5 hours with 4 other guys riding V-Stroms and Varaderos. I met them at the place I was staying last night, and they were just unbelievably friendly and said, hey, do you want to come ride with us for the day? We did. We're riding in this sort of stuff for the whole day. Then they bought me lunch, and I just said good luck to them there, because But they're the most fantastic people, the Colombians. So I headed south, and there's a couple of towns everybody hits. One is Popayán. The next town just close to the border is Ipiales. So everything was fine. I checked out of Colombia, but before I'd actually checked into Ecuador, so in other words it was in no man's land. I went to the bike and it had what is a nightmare fail for any BMW owner, is an EWS ignition failure, which means the whole bike is dead. All the electronics basically just all stop working. It's a ring which is in the ignition, and once it breaks, it's a known failure part with them. So what I ended up having to do was leave the bike parked up in no man's land, then go back into Colombia, explain to the border guard what was going on in just a terrible Spanish, but trying to explain to him what was after happening, and then go back into Ipiales, try and find somebody who could throw the bike up into a truck. Now, because it was an EWS fail and it's something that BMW have to fit, then I had to take a truck from there back to Cali, right, which was about 800 kilometers from there north. So if you think of the logistics of it, the bike is stuck in no man's land. You have to follow and get a truck, you know, in Ipiales to come down. I had to check back into Colombia and try and explain what had happened. Then get a truck to come down, take the bike, then arrange for a truck to take the bike to Cali in Colombia, about 800 kilometers further north. Maybe it's 600, I can't remember the exact distance. And then figure out a way to get myself to Cali, which I had to do via negotiating with a taxi driver to take me there. And go to Cali, get the bike, get it started, and then drive back down and do it all again. Bueno, sí. Muchas gracias. Well, that was the maddest ride I've been on in a long time. So this guy's just showed up with the truck. Gonna see if we can ship the bike back to Cali, and hopefully all is good. Started the day doing paperwork and finishing it. Anyway, nearly there, I think. So anyway, I got the bike, and it was, you know, I suppose I'd encountered maybe a 6-day delay at this stage, but all told. But by the time getting the bike, going up to Cali, collecting the bike, and then driving it back down, and I eventually crossed into Ecuador. The plan that I was going to do was to actually cut south, obviously through Ecuador and into Peru, and just follow the coast road in Peru. So having done, you know, Cusco and Machu Picchu, I said I'm not going to bother doing them. I'm just going to take the coast road south the whole way, and then cut into Chile, and then over into Argentina and do the Route of 40 from there. I think by the time I got to Ecuador, I was just done. I was done. I was like, I mean, I was sick. My stomach was really sick from the time I'd spent in Caucasia, and then as I was heading south, for that to happen, I really couldn't get over it. You know, it was almost like a kind of a death blow, because I was constantly just saying to myself, well, what are you doing? Why are you continuing to film here? Nobody's going to want to watch this, because the project had started out as 2 guys and now you were just 1 guy, and like, what are you doing? I headed off to San Pedro de Atacama, and San Pedro de Atacama is a kind of an oasis in the middle of the Atacama Desert. But from there then I crossed over into northern Argentina, and where I was headed for was La Quiaca, and the plan was basically just to ride to La Quiaca, which is the start of the Route of 40, and then just ride it the whole way south to Rio Gallegos, which I did. Oh. No! See? I walked out of there. Just coming around the bend. That's 3 times. Again. Well, this is the Route of 40. There you go. See? Woo! And listen. Look at the track it's like. Just can't drive it. And there's the fucking road. Holy shit. Look at this. How are you supposed to drive on that, huh? Eventually I got to Rio Gallegos, and from there drove up to Buenos Aires and drove home, eventually getting home in time for Christmas. But one of the things I had garnered in my head as I did the miles on the Route of 40, and you know, I had all that time to think about it, was I knew for sure that I was going to go and do Dublin to New York, and I knew it was going to be too late to try and get somebody to come and do it with me, so I knew I'd be doing it on my own. And You know, with the confidence that I gained having done the Route of 40 and the terrible conditions you encounter on that road, I had no fear setting off to do Dublin to New York, none whatsoever. I suppose doing the Route of 40 portion of it was just a way for me in my head to turn what was an absolute failure into something that I could look back on and be proud of. So from that point of view, that was a success, you know what I mean? But all it is just turning a massive failure into a small success, because that's what it was a massive failure. And you know, when I look back in it, you know, I see it as a massive failure on my part, but really it was just a massive failure in project management and scoping out a project before you actually dive headlong into it.